Everyone saw the police lights reflecting off our windows that night. But nobody knew why they were really there. I'll never forget the way my son looked at me through the glass door, his basketball still in his hands, frozen in fear. He was just 17. A kid, honor roll student, never been in trouble a single day in his life. And yet, that night, the cops were there for him. "Sir, your son is under arrest for ignoring an HOA fine," one of the officers said. I felt my stomach drop. Arrest? For what? I glanced at the two cruisers in front of our house, their lights spinning in the dark. Our neighbors were already peeking through their blinds. Amanda Blackwood's silhouette was standing across the street, arms folded, like she was about to watch the final scene of a play she had written herself, all because of a basketball hoop. I wish I was exaggerating. But no, Amanda, our neighborhood's self-appointed queen, had actually called the police on a teenager over a portable hoop my son's grandfather had given him. I'm David Mitchell. My wife Betty and I thought moving to this upscale neighborhood would change our lives for the better. We'd scraped together every penny to get here. Lucas, our pride and joy, was a rising basketball star with scouts already circling, and we wanted him in a neighborhood with opportunity. Perfect. Lawns, luxury cars, a community that looked like a magazine cover. What we didn't realize was that moving here meant stepping into Amanda Blackwood's kingdom. Amanda wasn't just any HOA board member. No, she was the kind of person who treated a neighborhood like her personal empire. Biggest house on the street, a luxury SUV that probably cost more than our annual income, and a permanent expression that said, "You don't belong here." The first time we met her, she didn't say hello. She looked at our house, at Lucas shooting hoops in the driveway, and at our 10-year-old sedan in the street. Then she smiled in a way that wasn't a smile at all. The trouble started the very first week. Lucas forgot to wheel his portable hoop back to the garage one night. Harmless, right? The next morning, a crisp white paper was taped to our door like a scarlet letter. "Oh, violation notice. $200 fine." The language was brutal. Certain families need to respect community standards. Property values must be protected. For appropriate residents. Appropriate residents. I can still feel the heat rising in my chest when I read that line. I decided to handle it like a decent neighbor. Walked across the street, knocked on Amanda's massive double doors. She answered in a silk robe that probably cost more than my laptop, sipped her coffee, and looked me up and down like she was deciding whether to let me stay in her world another day. "Look," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Lucas left his hoop out overnight. It won't happen again. Could we maybe waive this first fine?" Her smile never touched her eyes. "Rules are rules, Mr. Mitchell. If you can't follow them, well, maybe you'd be happier somewhere more suitable to your lifestyle." I walked home shaking. That $200 fine wasn't just a nuisance. It was money we didn't have. When I told Betty, I expected her to panic like I was. Instead, she listened quietly, then said, "Document everything. Keep copies of every letter. Don't confront her. Just let her dig her own hole." It was the first time I noticed that strange, unshakable calm in my wife's eyes. A quiet confidence, like she knew something I didn't. I wish I could say that first fine was the end of it. It wasn't even the beginning. The next few weeks became a slow-motion nightmare. Amanda escalated from letters to daily inspections. We'd wake up to find her slowly circling our house, phone in hand, taking pictures like she was a private investigator building a case. New notices appeared on our door almost every morning. $50. Excessive noise for Lucas dribbling at 3 p.m. $100. Unauthorized gathering for 2 friends doing homework in our driveway. $250. Property violation for the unsightly sight of our portable hoop in the corner of the driveway. The eye. Fines piled up. $200 became $500. $500 became $750. I started to feel the weight of something darker than money pressing down on us. At night, I'd see Lucas staring at his basketball like it had betrayed him. He'd hesitate before taking it outside, his eyes scanning the street like he was expecting a trap. This was supposed to be his sanctuary, his place to dream about scholarships and college games. Instead, he was living in fear. I wanted to march across the street and scream at Amanda to leave my family alone. But every time, Betty would put a hand on my arm and shake her head. "Not yet," she'd whisper. "Trust me." Trust her? I didn't even know what was happening anymore. I started noticing strange things about my wife. She was suddenly busier than ever. Late-night phone calls with people she referred to only by titles, notes in an official-looking planner with some kind of government seal. And when I'd ask what she was working on, she'd just give that same mysterious smile and say, "Consulting project." But it didn't feel like consulting anymore. It felt official, dangerous. Meanwhile, Amanda's obsession with us became almost theatrical. I'd catch her standing in the middle of the street, photographing our house at sunrise. She'd whisper with neighbors during their evening walks, pointing toward our windows. The isolation hit hard. Some neighbors avoided eye contact. A few gave us sympathetic nods, but no one wanted to be Amanda's next target. And then one morning, I found a note in our mailbox from a neighbor named Susan Walsh. "Watch your back. She's trying to force you out. S." My hands shook as I read it. Force us out? I later learned Amanda was facing foreclosure. She'd been targeting families she thought she could scare into leaving so she could buy their homes cheap and flip them for profit. We weren't just dealing with an HOA bully. We were in the middle of someone else's high-stakes, life-or-death financial game. The pressure built like a storm cloud over our house. Lucas was getting quieter. Betty was getting more secretive. And I was walking around with a knot in my chest, waiting for the moment Amanda would go too far. That moment came one Thursday afternoon. Lucas was outside, shooting hoops with two of his friends. Good kids, honor students. They were laughing, taking turns making shots, just being teenagers. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I saw her, Amanda, marching across the street like a general heading to war, phone in hand, recording. She started yelling before she even reached our driveway. "You people need to learn some respect. This used to be a decent neighborhood." The boys froze. Lucas tried to be polite, but she kept going, voice rising, accusations, spilling out like poison. When they didn't react the way she wanted, she stepped back and made a call. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment everything changed. Amanda told 911 that teenagers were threatening her with weapons, that they were dealing drugs in our driveway, that she feared for her life. Didn't hear the words, but I saw her face. The fake panic. The wild gestures toward our house. 20 minutes later, 2 police cruisers rolled up with lights flashing, and my son, my brilliant, kind, basketball-loving son, was about to be treated like a criminal. All because a neighbor decided her power was more important than our humanity. The flashing red and blue lights painted our living room walls like some surreal nightmare. I stepped outside, heart pounding, as 2 officers approached our driveway. Officer Smith and Officer White, badges glinting in the late afternoon sun, looked tense, their hands resting on their holsters. I glanced toward Lucas. He was frozen, basketball still in hand, his 2 friends looking like they might bolt at any second. "Sir," Officer Smith said, voice firm but calm, "we got a call about possible weapons and illegal activity at this address. Step aside, please." Weapons? Illegal activity? I felt the world tilt under my feet. My son, my kid who spent weekends helping his grandmother with groceries and evenings, practicing free throws, was being accused of... What? Across the street, Amanda stood with her phone still raised, fake tears glistening in the corners of her eyes. She looked like she was waiting for her award-winning performance to be recognized. "Officers, this is insane," I said, my voice cracking. "These are kids. They were playing basketball." "Sir, we'll need to verify everything. For everyone's safety, keep your hands visible," Officer White instructed. The neighbors were gathering now. Curtains twitched, garage doors cracked open. I could feel the heat of their curiosity, the judgment radiating from behind those perfect lawns. Lucas swallowed hard. "Dad, I didn't do anything." "I know, son, I know." Then, like some scene out of a movie, Betty stepped out onto the porch, calm, steady. And in that moment, everything started to shift. "Officers, she said in a tone I'd never quite heard before. Measured, professional, commanding. Before you proceed, may I have the incident number for documentation? Both officers glanced at each other. Smith's posture eased slightly. Yes, ma'am. Incident 3417. Are you Mrs. Mitchell? Yes, and I'll need your cards. For the report. I watched, baffled, as the tension seemed to drain from the air, not entirely, but enough for me to breathe again, because somehow Officer Smith recognized her. Wait, don't I know you from the county office building? He asked, a spark of familiarity in his voice. Betty offered a polite smile. I attend meetings from time to time, government consulting. But the way they looked, at her, it was more than casual recognition. There was respect in it. Meanwhile, Amanda was getting restless. What are you doing? She snapped at the officers. Arrest him. He threatened me. He's dangerous. Officer White turned slowly toward her. Ma'am, we'll need a statement from you. Please describe the weapons you claim to have seen. Amanda hesitated. Well, I thought I saw something metal. Something metal, Officer White repeated, scribbling. Maybe a bat? Or something like that? They hid it when I called. I almost laughed. Almost. There are no weapons here, I said, my voice shaking with both anger and disbelief. You can search the whole property. Officer Smith glanced toward the boys. Kids, mind stepping aside while we look around? Lucas nodded, jaw tight, and stepped back with his friends. As they checked the driveway and garage, Amanda kept fidgeting, her confidence slipping with every passing second. And Betty? She was documenting everything. Names, times, badge numbers, calm as ever, like she'd done this before. I leaned toward her and whispered, How are you so calm right now? Because, she said quietly, people like Amanda always overplay. Their hand. The search took less than 5 minutes. No weapons, no drugs, not even a stray soda can out of place. Officer White returned to Amanda, his expression unreadable. Ma'am, we found no evidence to support your claims. Are you sure? About what you saw? Amanda's cheeks flushed. I must have... Maybe they hid it. You can't just let them get away with this. They're ruining the neighborhood. I could see neighbors gathering in clusters now, whispering. Phones were out. Cameras were rolling. Amanda was unraveling, and everyone could see it. Officer Smith's tone turned firm. Ma'am, filing a false emergency report is a serious offense. You claimed there were weapons and illegal activity. Neither appears to be true. Do you understand the consequences? Amanda's mouth opened, then closed. She glanced around and realized, for the first time, she wasn't the one in control anymore. Betty took a slow step forward, voice calm but carrying authority. Officers, please ensure this incident is fully documented. We've been experiencing ongoing harassment, and this escalation could have endangered these boys' lives. Officer Smith nodded. Understood, ma'am. We'll be including her statements in our report, Amanda sputtered. Harassment? I'm the victim here. These people don't belong in this neighborhood. The words hung in the air like a poison cloud. Every neighbor heard it. Every phone camera caught it. And in that moment, Amanda Blackwood went from concerned neighbor to exactly what she was, a bully with a prejudice problem. By the time the AIA officers left with a warning that filing false 911 calls could result in charges, Amanda's performance had collapsed completely. She stomped back across the street, muttering threats about lawyers and political connections. I wanted to feel relief, but I couldn't shake the image of those red and blue lights reflecting off my son's terrified face. Inside, I paced the kitchen while Betty calmly organized papers at the table. I can't take this anymore, I said. She's going to destroy us. She won't stop until we're gone. Betty looked up at me with that same calm, that same quiet confidence. She's already destroyed herself, she said. I frowned. What are you talking about? Betty slid a folder toward me. I opened it and felt my jaw slacken. Inside were copies of every letter, every notice, every violation she'd documented. Dates, times, photos, even audio clips of Amanda's discriminatory rants, caught on our security camera. This isn't just harassment, Betty said softly. It's a pattern, and patterns have consequences. I stared at her like I was seeing my wife for the first time. How do you even know all this legal stuff? I asked. This isn't just paperwork consulting, is it? She gave that mysterious little smile again. Let's just say I've dealt with bullies like her before, and they never win in the end. Outside, I could see Amanda pacing in her driveway, phone glued to her ear, gesturing wildly as she talked to someone. It was the look of a woman who had just realized her world was starting to crumble. But she didn't know yet that she'd just picked a fight with someone who wasn't afraid of her, and someone with far more power than she could ever imagine. The neighborhood never really went back to normal after that night. Even after the police left and the flashing lights faded from our walls, the damage was done. Everyone had seen it. Everyone had heard Amanda screaming about people like us. And Lucas, my boy didn't sleep right for days. I'd walk past his room late at night and see the faint glow of his phone as he scrolled through neighborhood discussion boards, reading what people were saying about him, about us. Some comments were supportive. Amanda's gone too far this time. Others were cruel. If they can't follow the rules, maybe they should leave. Lucas had never been in trouble, never broken a law, never even missed a homework assignment. And now he was being whispered about like some kind of delinquent because a neighbor couldn't stand the sight of a basketball hoop. I wanted to fix it. I wanted to take that weight off his shoulders. But Amanda wasn't finished with us. If anything, the failed police stunt only made her more dangerous. The next week, a thick envelope arrived in our mailbox. Legal letterhead, certified delivery. My hands shook as I opened it at the kitchen table. Notice of civil action. I read the words, and it felt like the air left my lungs. Amanda Blackwood, our neighbor, our tormentor, was suing us. Harassment. Property damage, threats to community safety. The words swam in front of me. My head buzzed. Betty, I said, my voice thin. She's taking us to court. My wife took the papers from me, scanned them quietly, and didn't even flinch. She's desperate, Betty murmured, flipping through the pages. Look at this. Wrong dates, incomplete documentation. Her attorney is rushing this. How can you be so calm? I demanded, pacing the kitchen. She's got money, lawyers. We've got… What? I can't afford to fight her in court. Betty set the papers down with almost surgical precision. We have something better than money, she said. We have the truth, and I know exactly how to use it. I stared at her. Betty, how do you even know all this? She didn't answer. Just gave that same small, secretive smile and started gathering files from the cabinet I'd never noticed before. Neatly organized binders full of our HOA letters, photos, certified mail receipts. She had been preparing for this. I hadn't realized it, but my wife was fighting a war I didn't even understand. The days leading up to the court date were some of the hardest of my life. Amanda wasn't content with legal papers and fines. She launched a full-scale reputation attack. She went door-to-door spinning lies about us. She posted rants online about rule breakers destroying property values. One morning, I caught her standing on the sidewalk with two other neighbors, gesturing toward our house and speaking in hushed, venomous tones. Every time I stepped outside, I felt the weight of 100 unseen eyes. Lucas tried to focus on school and basketball, but I could see it in his shoulders. He was carrying the stress like a backpack full of bricks. One night, I found him in the garage, sitting on the floor, with his basketball between his knees. Dad, he said quietly, what if she ruins everything? What if I don't get a scholarship because of all this? I wanted to tell him no one could take his dreams away. But Amanda was trying, and for the first time, I wasn't sure I could protect him. The day before our court hearing, I reached my breaking point. Betty was in her office again, laptop open, her fingers flying across the keyboard. I can't take this anymore, I said, my voice raw. This woman is destroying our family. I don't even recognize our life anymore. And you're just calm. Like none of this scares you. Why? Betty paused, slowly turned to me, Then she walked to the closet, reached up to the top shelf, and pulled down a black leather case I'd never seen before. Inside, carefully protected, was a document that stopped my heart. Her law degree. Betty. "What the hell?" she smiled softly. "I didn't want to live my whole life as the lawyer wife. I wanted a normal marriage. But I've always been ready for this." Suddenly, 1,000 little moments clicked into place. The legal terms, the precise documentation, the calm under pressure. My wife wasn't just a government paperwork consultant. She was a trained attorney, and apparently a very good one. The morning of the hearing, I watched Betty transform. She stepped out of our bedroom in a charcoal suit I didn't even know she owned, hair pulled back, carrying a sleek briefcase that screamed authority. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. We walked into the county courthouse like we were stepping into a lion's den. Neighbors filled the benches, eager to witness the drama. Amanda sat at the plaintiff's table, dripping in jewelry and smugness, her expensive attorney at her side. She glanced at us and smirked like she'd already won, but that smirk faltered when Betty laid out her files with the precision of a surgeon. When our case was called, Amanda's lawyer started with his performance. "Your Honor, this family has repeatedly violated community standards, harassed my client, and created a hostile environment." Betty didn't even blink. She just waited. Watched. Then it was our turn, and my quiet, mysterious wife became a force of nature. "Your Honor," Betty said, her voice calm and clear, "what we have here is not a case of community rule enforcement. It is a pattern of harassment, motivated by financial interest and personal bias." She produced certified letters, time-stamped photos, audio recordings of Amanda's own voice, making discriminatory statements. She brought a witness, Susan Walsh, who testified about Amanda's scheme to drive out families and buy homes below market value. And then, the foreclosure notice, Amanda's. Betty laid it gently on the table, revealing the real reason behind months of harassment: Amanda's desperate attempt to save herself from financial ruin. I'll never forget the look on the judge's face, or Amanda's. By the time Betty finished, the courtroom was silent except for the faint shuffling of papers. Amanda's attorney looked like he wanted to sink through the floor, and the judge? She dismissed the lawsuit with prejudice, meaning Amanda couldn't bring it back. Then, she issued sanctions for filing a frivolous case, and a warning about the consequences of false police reports. I exhaled for the first time in months. Walking out of that courtroom, I realized something. Amanda had underestimated the wrong family. But what I didn't realize yet was that my wife's true power hadn't even been revealed. Not to Amanda, not to the neighbors, not even to me. Amanda Blackwood didn't take defeat quietly. If anything, losing in court only lit a fuse under her. The very next morning, neighborhood discussion boards lit up with her rants. Corruption in our own community. Dangerous families being protected by the system. I will not stop until justice is served. I stared at my phone in disbelief, scrolling through post after post of Amanda's unhinged ramblings. She wasn't just venting. She was naming us. She was painting my family as criminals. Lucas saw it too. "Dad," he said quietly, holding up his phone. She's tagging me in these posts. She's saying I'm dangerous." The look on his face nearly broke me. This was supposed to be his senior year, his golden year, a time for basketball games, college visits, and dreams of the future, not public character assassination by a neighbor with a grudge. And yet, somehow, Betty stayed calm. She was in her home office, methodically documenting every post, every comment, every screenshot. "She's making it worse for herself," my wife said, her tone even. "Let her keep talking." I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't shake the anxiety building in my chest. How much worse can it get? I muttered. The answer came 2 days later. Susan Walsh, our nurse neighbor, the one brave enough to warn us early on, knocked on our door, eyes wide. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "Amanda's at the police station right now, demanding to speak to the chief. She's saying the entire department is corrupt for not arresting Lucas. My stomach flipped. She what? Susan nodded. She marched in like she owned the place. She's yelling about calling the media. About political connections. David, she's completely losing it. I glanced toward Betty, expecting anger or worry. Instead, she was buttoning her blazer. Perfect timing, she murmured, grabbing a sleek leather briefcase I'd never seen before. What do you mean? Perfect timing? I asked. I have a meeting at the police station this afternoon, she said. Chief Anderson requested it. I blinked. You have a meeting with the police chief? About what? Betty's only response was that same mysterious smile that had carried us through this storm. Trust me, she said. You'll understand soon. The neighborhood buzzed with speculation that afternoon. People saw Amanda storming into the station, red-faced and waving a stack of papers. Some even followed her inside to witness the spectacle. According to Susan, who was coincidentally there dropping off medical forms, Amanda's tirade was next level. She was screaming about conspiracies, saying the judge was biased, that the HOA was being undermined by outsiders, Susan told me over the phone. She even said Lucas was part of some youth gang trying to destroy property values. I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was obsession. And then Susan lowered her voice. But, David, the best part? You're going to want to hear this. I sat up. She was mid-rant, screaming at Chief Anderson, when the door to his office opened. And in walked your wife. I wish I could have been there to see it. The way Susan described it, the air in that room changed instantly. Amanda froze, mid-accusation, as Betty stepped in, poised, polished, exuding authority in a way even I hadn't fully seen before. She wasn't Betty the paperwork consultant. She was something else. Chief Anderson stood up the moment she entered. Ms. Williams, he said respectfully. Thank you for coming. Williams. Hearing Susan tell it gave me chills. My wife wasn't just some quiet legal mind. She was known, recognized, and then Amanda's face turned the color of chalk. According to Susan, she stammered, Wait, why is he standing for you? Who are you? Betty's voice was steady, calm, devastating. I'm Betty Williams, county manager, and the mother of the boy you've been harassing for 6 months. Game over. Susan said the silence that followed was like a vacuum sucking all the bravado out of Amanda's body. The chief confirmed what Betty had been building toward for months. Every false 911 call, every harassing letter, every discriminatory comment, every online rant. All of it was officially documented. Amanda wasn't the hunter anymore. She was the prey. When Betty came home that evening, I was waiting in the kitchen, heart pounding. I didn't even ask. I just stared at the badge clipped to her briefcase. County manager, all the late-night phone calls, the legal knowledge, the calm in the storm. It all clicked. You could have stopped her at any time, I said quietly. Yes, Betty replied. But then she would have played the victim. Now, she's done this to herself. I let out a long, shaky breath. I had no idea who I married, I said, half joking, half in awe. Betty smirked. You married someone who protects her family, always. The fallout was immediate. Amanda went from queen bee to social pariah, overnight. Her rants online became evidence in an official harassment case. Neighbors who had once feared her now openly distanced themselves. Some even came by our house to apologize. I should have spoken up sooner, one whispered. We were all scared of her. Lucas, for the first time in months, smiled while shooting hoops in the driveway. You think she's really gone for good? He asked. I watched Betty step onto the porch, sunlight catching the county badge on her briefcase. Oh, I said, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. She's gone. She just doesn't know it yet. Amanda Blackwood was a storm that didn't know it had already passed. 2 days after her meltdown at the police station, the first official papers landed in her mailbox. Notice of civil rights investigation. I watched from my office window as she tore open the envelope at the end of her driveway. At first she squinted, confused. Then her hand shook. The paper slipped to the pavement. Even from across the street, I could see it in her posture, the sudden sinking awareness that her world was starting to collapse. I'll never forget the way she slowly turned toward our house, not with anger, with fear. That week was a whirlwind of whispers, posts, and the kind of neighborhood theater you couldn't make up if you tried. Neighbors who once walked their dogs with Amanda now crossed the street when they saw her coming. Community threads flipped from, "Amanda is protecting our property values," to "She's gone too far. She's a liability." I even saw a message in the HOA forum that made me laugh out loud. I heard she picked a fight with the wrong family. The mom is county government or something. Checkmate. Amanda tried to salvage her reputation. She posted long, rambling Facebook rants about corruption and favoritism. Claimed she was the victim of a coordinated attack by outsiders. But every word she typed only added to the pile of evidence Betty was collecting. Lucas, for the first time in months, started to breathe again. He played basketball in the driveway with his friends without looking over his shoulder. Laughter returned to our home, but I could still see the shadow in his eyes when he thought I wasn't looking. One night, while he was eating a bowl of cereal at the counter, he said quietly, "Dad, do you think people at school saw all that? The cops? The posts?" I hesitated. "Some might have, but you've done nothing wrong, son. People will see that." He nodded, but I could feel his worry. Amanda hadn't just attacked our family, she'd attacked his future, and that I would never forgive. Meanwhile, Betty was moving with quiet, unstoppable precision. Her evenings were a symphony of phone calls, document reviews, and emails that carried the weight of authority. I caught glimpses of letterheads: County Legal Division, Civil Rights Compliance, Public Safety Office. She never bragged, never gloated. She didn't need to. Justice was unfolding exactly the way she wanted it to. One night, I leaned against her office doorframe and asked, "You could have shut this down months ago, couldn't you?" She looked up from her laptop, calm as ever. "Yes, but people like Amanda, if you swat them too early, they play the victim. They hide behind money and noise. You have to let them show the world exactly who they are first." I thought about all the nights I'd spent pacing the kitchen, my stomach in knots while my wife quietly built the kind of case that could end a bully's reign forever. It was a lesson I wouldn't forget. Sometimes the strongest defense is patience, and the right kind of power. The official crackdown started the following Monday morning. 2 unmarked county vehicles pulled into Amanda's driveway, investigators. I watched through the blinds as they knocked on her door, clipboards in hand. She answered in sweatpants and a wild expression, hair unbrushed, looking nothing like the polished queen of the HOA she had been a month ago. They were there for hours. Susan texted me from down the street. They're inventorying everything, letters, her HOA files, even her computer. It's over. I couldn't stop watching. Amanda paced her driveway, on the phone, gesturing wildly at the investigators, at her house, at our house. Every movement screamed panic, and for the first time in this entire nightmare I felt relief. She couldn't touch us anymore. The next HOA meeting was something out of a reality show. Betty didn't speak. She didn't have to. Amanda shuffled in late, eyes darting, trying to avoid the stares of her neighbors. The president of the board, who had once been her ally, cleared his throat and read a prepared statement. Effective immediately, Amanda Blackwood is suspended from the HOA board pending the outcome of ongoing investigations. There was a collective murmur. Someone in the back actually clapped before realizing they probably shouldn't. Amanda tried to protest. "This is corruption! This is retaliation! I'm the victim!" But the board president's voice was flat. "You filed false emergency reports. You targeted a family without cause. You put this entire community at risk of liability." The rest of the meeting was a blur of whispers and side eyes. Amanda didn't look like a queen anymore. She looked small. That night, Betty and I sat on the porch, listening to the soft thud of Lucas's basketball in the driveway. "You knew it would end like this," I said quietly. Betty sipped her tea. "I knew she'd end it for herself. All I had to do was let her." I stared at my wife, feeling a mix of awe and gratitude. "You ever gonna tell me the whole story?" I asked. She smiled, that same calm, mysterious smile. "Soon," she said. "But first, she has to face the part she's been running from." The very next morning, Amanda's world officially caved in. A sheriff's deputy delivered a thick envelope to her door. She opened it right there on her porch, hands trembling. Notice of pending criminal charges. Filing false police reports. From my window, I watched her sink onto the steps, paper in hand, as if the weight of the last 6 months had finally landed all at once. Her empire, her power, her reputation. Gone. The same neighbors she had manipulated, the ones she'd whispered with in driveways and recruited into her schemes, now crossed the street to avoid her. And in the middle of it all, my wife, the quiet storm Amanda never saw coming, was still calm, still collected, and still holding every card. That evening, Lucas came inside from shooting hoops, sweat on his forehead, but a smile on his face. "Feels good again," he said softly. I ruffled his hair. "Yeah, buddy, it does." He hesitated, then asked, "Is it really over?" I glanced toward Betty, who was flipping through one last folder of documents. She didn't even look up. "Oh," she said. "It's over. She just doesn't know the last chapter yet." Amanda Blackwood had always been loud. She'd ruled this neighborhood with a voice that carried across cul-de-sacs and sank like poison into whispers and rumors. But in the weeks after the investigation began, the loudest thing about her was the silence. Her luxury SUV stayed parked in the driveway, unmoving. Her perfectly trimmed hedges started to grow wild. Mail piled up in her box until the postal carrier left a notice, and when neighbors walked their dogs past her once pristine home, they didn't wave, they didn't speak, they just watched. I did too. I watched through my blinds as the woman who had once controlled our lives with letters, fines, and threats now flinched every time a car slowed in front of her house. The HOA board had cut her off. The neighbors had abandoned her, and the county. The county was just getting started. The first public blow landed on a Wednesday morning. A local news van parked on our street, and a reporter stepped out, heels clicking on the asphalt. I felt my pulse spike when she approached me with a microphone. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, "would you like to comment on the HOA harassment allegations currently under investigation?" I hesitated. Then I saw Betty step out of the house, calm as ever, a folder in her hand. "No interviews," she said politely. "The county will release an official statement." The reporter nodded respectfully, and turned her camera toward Amanda's house. Susan told me later she watched Amanda peek from behind her curtains, then duck down like a kid playing hide-and-seek. That night, the segment aired on the evening news. Local HOA board member under investigation for harassment, false police reports, and misuse of emergency services, the anchor said. Amanda's house filled the screen. Our story, our nightmare, was now public. And suddenly, the whispers became a roar. The next HOA meeting was standing room only. I almost didn't go, but Betty insisted. "It's important for the neighbors to see the end," she said softly, her eyes steady. We walked into the community center, and every head turned. I could feel it. Respect now, not pity. People nodded at Betty, some whispering to each other like they were in the presence of someone they'd underestimated for years. Amanda was already there. She sat slumped in a metal folding chair at the back, her face pale, hair unstyled, clutching a manila envelope like it was a lifeline. The board president called the meeting to order. His voice shook with a kind of formal gravity. After reviewing the county's findings, he said, and in coordination with the Civil Rights Compliance Office, Amanda Blackwood is officially removed from the HOA board, effective immediately. Furthermore, she is banned from filing future violations against any resident until the legal matters are resolved. The room erupted in murmurs. Amanda jolted up from her chair. "You can't do this!" she shrieked. I built this neighborhood. I protected it. The board president didn't flinch. No, Amanda, you terrorized it. I'll never forget. The sound that came out of her then, half scream, half sob, as she slammed the manila envelope on the floor and stormed out. The door swung shut behind her, and in that moment, it felt like a curse had been lifted. Lucas thrived in the calm that followed. He went back to practicing with his friends in the driveway, laughing under the streetlights like a normal teenager. College recruiters returned his calls. Scholarships were back on the table. Our home felt like a home again. But for Amanda, the walls were closing in. We didn't see her much anymore. When we did, it was fleeting. A car pulling into the driveway late at night, curtains snapping shut in the morning. Susan said she spotted a for sale by owner sign leaning in Amanda's garage and whispered, "She's leaving." But Betty shook her head. "Not yet," she said. "She still thinks she can run from this." Then came the day I call the real end of it all. It was a gray Tuesday afternoon when Betty got a call from Chief Anderson. She listened, nodded, and said, "Yes, I'll be there in 30 minutes. When she hung up, I asked, "What now?" She picked up her county-issued briefcase and said, "The final conversation." I wasn't there, but Betty told me every detail that night. Amanda had shown up at the police station, again, demanding to file some last-minute complaint, claiming the investigation was illegal and biased. She was mid-rant in the lobby when the door to Chief Anderson's office opened, and Betty walked in. Not as the quiet neighbor, not as the paperwork consultant, as the county manager. Chief Anderson stood. Officers stepped aside, and Amanda's world shattered in a single, silent moment. "Wait. What?" she stammered. Why are they standing for you?" Betty set her briefcase on the table and met her eyes. "I told you before." "Amanda," she said. "I'm Betty Williams, county manager, and the mother of the boy you've been harassing for 6 months." Amanda's mouth opened, closed. She shook her head like she could undo reality by refusing to believe it. No. "No, you're just a housewife." Betty's voice stayed calm. "That was your first and biggest mistake." Chief Anderson went over the charges: false police reports, harassment, civil rights violations. He explained how every single letter, every single online rant, every single phone call to 911 had become part of a meticulously documented case. A case my wife had quietly built, piece by piece, while Amanda dug her own grave. By the time he finished, Amanda's face was as white as the paper she'd once used to tape fines to our door. "Effective immediately," Chief Anderson said, "you are under a formal restraining order from the Mitchell family, and your case has been referred for prosecution." Amanda started to cry, but it was too late. When Betty came home that night, Lucas was in the driveway shooting free throws. She walked past him, paused, and said, "Keep practicing, son. This driveway is yours." I watched her from the porch, the woman I thought I knew completely, and realized something profound. Amanda had money, she had connections, but Betty had patience, intelligence, and the kind of power that doesn't need to shout, the kind of power that only moves when it's already won. The quiet after a storm always feels heavier than the thunder itself. And in the weeks that followed Amanda's final confrontation at the police station, the neighborhood felt like it was holding its breath. Her house, the once pristine symbol of control, stood like a monument to downfall. No laughter, no visitors, no perfectly arranged flower baskets swaying on the porch. The grass began to yellow. Newspapers collected like forgotten reminders of the life she'd once pretended to own. Every day, I watched through my kitchen window as Amanda peeked through her blinds, her eyes darting nervously at passing cars. The queen of the cul-de-sac was now a prisoner in her own home. Then came the day the sheriff's deputy arrived with the official papers. I was in the driveway with Lucas, helping him set up some cones for his basketball drills, when the cruiser rolled up to Amanda's curb. She opened the door slowly, her shoulders sagging, and took the papers without a word. I didn't need to see the documents to know what they were. Formal criminal charges, civil penalties, the restraining order in black and white. Amanda sat down right there on her porch steps, staring at the envelope, like it weighed 100 pounds. For the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel anger. I felt something almost like pity. Almost. Because I remembered Lucas's face the night those police lights danced across his bedroom walls. Remembered his whispered question, "Dad, did I do something wrong?" And I knew Amanda had earned every single ounce of her downfall. The neighborhood began to shift. People who had once stayed silent started speaking up. Susan Walsh became a hero in our little circle for testifying at the hearing. Other families we barely knew, started sharing their own Amanda stories. The single mom whose recycling bin violated community aesthetics. The retired couple fined for a garden gnome visible from the street. The young family Amanda tried to push out with endless letters about improper lawn maintenance. We weren't the first family she'd targeted. We were just the first family that didn't break. And now, the neighborhood was free. I'll never forget the first community barbecue we hosted after Amanda's HOA suspension became public. Neighbors filled our backyard with folding chairs and laughter, the smell of burgers and ribs hanging in the warm evening air. Lucas was playing basketball with kids of all ages, showing them how to dribble between cones and make clean jump shots. One little boy, maybe 8 years old, looked up at him with wide eyes and said, "I want to play like you someday." I saw Lucas smile, a real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in months. And in that moment, I realized something important. This wasn't just about beating Amanda. It was about giving my son his joy back. Meanwhile, Amanda's fall from grace reached a point of no return. The local news picked up her story again, this time with updates about her legal trouble. Her mugshot appeared on the evening broadcast. Former HOA board member faces criminal charges after months-long harassment campaign against neighbors. Neighbors who had once whispered now openly discussed her behavior in comment sections and community forums. The same people who had once feared her were now publicly condemning her. And the final blow came in the form of a foreclosure notice on her front door. Susan texted me a picture of it with 3 simple words: game over, checkmate. Through all of it, Betty remained the eye of the storm, calm, professional, quietly unstoppable. One night, after Lucas had gone to bed, I found her on the porch watching the quiet street. "You could have crushed her from day one," I said, softly. "Yes," she replied. "But then she would have twisted the story. She would have played the victim. This way. Everyone saw her for who she is. She defeated herself." I thought about everything she had done. Every document, every photo, every call, the patience it took, the restraint. "She'll leave soon," Betty said, sipping her tea. "She won't survive the humiliation." Betty was right. A week later, a moving truck pulled into Amanda's driveway. No neighbors came to help. No one waved. I watched from my office window as she loaded the last of her boxes, her once proud head bowed. When she finally drove away, the street felt lighter. It was like someone had taken a heavy coat off the neighborhood's shoulders. Lucas came running in from the driveway, breathless. "She's gone," he said. "For real this time." I ruffled his hair and smiled. "Yeah, buddy, she's gone." Life began to bloom again in the absence of Amanda's shadow. Lucas started receiving official scholarship offers. We hosted weekend basketball games for the neighborhood kids, and for the first time since we'd moved in, our home actually felt like a home. I'd see neighbors waving as they walked their dogs, kids riding bikes past our driveway, parents stopping to chat about weather and school. Normal life, the kind we'd dreamed of when we scraped together. Every penny to move here. But for me, the biggest change was in my son. The anxiety that had weighed him down for months lifted. He laughed freely. He played with confidence again. And I realized the real victory wasn't just Amanda losing. It was Lucas winning his life back. Late one night, I stepped into the driveway with Betty. Lucas's basketball hoop stood in its usual place, under the soft glow of the streetlight. I leaned against the car, exhaling slowly. "You know," I said, I don't think I've ever been prouder of anyone than I am of you." Betty glanced at me with that calm, knowing smile. "I didn't do it for pride," she said. "I did it because bullies like Amanda count on people staying quiet. They count on fear, and fear only wins if you let it." I looked at the hoop, the driveway, the quiet street, and felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. 6 months after Amanda Blackwood drove away for the last time, the neighborhood didn't just feel different, it was different. The air was lighter. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. And our home finally felt like the place we'd dreamed of when we scraped together every penny to move here. I'd step into the driveway on Saturday mornings and see kids riding bikes, dogs tugging their leashes, neighbors waving as they strolled past. The same neighbors who once peeked from behind. Curtains, afraid of Amanda's retaliation, now stopped to chat about gardens and weather. It was like the street had taken a deep, collective breath and exhaled her memory. Lucas thrived in that calm. He played basketball in the driveway like nothing had ever happened, his laughter ringing down the block. His friends came over without hesitation, their sneakers squeaking, on the asphalt as they practiced jump shots and layups. One afternoon, I leaned against the garage and just watched him. The sun caught his smile, and I realized it was the first time in nearly a year that he looked completely free. He wasn't looking over his shoulder anymore. He wasn't hesitating before taking a shot. He was just being a kid. A kid with a dream. Then came the moment we'd been waiting for, the official letter from his top choice college. Lucas ripped it open at the kitchen table, his hands trembling. He read silently for a second, his eyes going wide. "Full scholarship," he whispered. I felt my throat tighten. Betty reached over and squeezed his hand, her calm exterior breaking into a proud smile. We'd survived hell and come out the other side stronger. Amanda's downfall became a kind of local legend. Her criminal case proceeded quietly, but the outcome was decisive. Fines for filing false police reports, mandatory restitution for harassment, a permanent restraining order, and the foreclosure she'd tried so desperately to avoid. It went through. The house she'd once lorded over the neighborhood with became just another listing on a real estate website, eventually bought by a young couple who hung flower baskets on the porch without fear of violations. The first time I saw them wave from that porch, I felt a quiet satisfaction settle over me. Life had replaced the storm. But for me, the real story wasn't Amanda. It was Betty. The woman I'd been married to for 20 years turned out to be a force of nature hiding in plain sight. The calm voice that told me to trust her in our darkest moments was backed by law degrees, government authority, and the kind of intelligence that doesn't need to raise its voice to win. One night, after Lucas had gone to bed, I sat with her on the porch, sipping tea under the warm glow of the porch light. "You knew from day one we were going to win, didn't you?" I said. Betty tilted her head, considering. "I knew she'd destroy herself," she said. "I just needed to give her the space to do it." I shook my head, still in awe. "You let her think she was in control the whole time." A faint smile touched her lips. "Sometimes," she said softly, "the best way to beat a bully is to let them hand you the rope." We started hosting small neighborhood events after that. Barbecues, basketball games, even a little block party to celebrate Lucas's scholarship. The same neighbors who once whispered in fear now laughed together. In the open. Our driveway, once a battleground, had become the heart of the block. Kids played horse under the streetlight. Parents shared stories and grilled hot dogs. Even Susan, our brave nurse neighbor, joked, "I feel like we should hang a plaque on your garage that says Amanda lost here." We all laughed, and for the first time in months, it wasn't bitter. Laughter. It was real. I often think about the lessons buried in this wild story. Not the legal lessons, though I now know more about HOA bylaws than I ever wanted to. The human ones. Learned that quiet strength is often the most unshakable kind. I learned that bullies always overplay their hand when they believe no one will stand up to them. And I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or flashy, it's thorough, legal, and leaves your conscience clean. Watching my wife, my son, and my neighborhood emerge from Amanda's shadow reminded me of something simple but powerful. Dignity doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just stands steady and waits for the storm to collapse on itself. 6 months after Amanda left, I stood in the driveway watching Lucas teach his little cousins how to dribble. The same portable basketball hoop that started this whole mess stood proud in the corner, its net swaying gently in the evening breeze. Every bounce of the ball was a reminder. We were still here. We'd weathered the storm, and the home we fought for was finally ours. Not just the property, but the peace. One evening, as the sun dipped below the rooftops, Lucas sank a perfect three-pointer and raised his arms in triumph. Betty clapped from the porch, her quiet smile saying everything words couldn't. I put my arm around her and whispered, "You didn't just protect our family. You taught us what real strength looks like." She leaned into me slightly. "No," she said. "We taught Amanda what happens when you underestimate the quiet ones." I looked around at our peaceful, laughing, united neighborhood and thought, sometimes the good guys really do win, and sometimes justice looks like a basketball hoop in the driveway, a family on the porch, and the echo of a bully's footsteps fading into the distance.